Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whatever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to part 7, I think, for the Heart Simple Platformer series in Godot 4. This series and all of the series, actually, on my channel were made possible by the people who support me by purchasing my courses. So if you're interested in those, there's a link in the pinned comment and in the description of this video. Let's get started. In this video, we're going to be doing some level creation, and we'll want to be using an Autotile, Godot's tiling system, their tile maps. Now, in the last video, real quick, I want to say that we implemented this level complete screen, right? And pause the game. And another thing was that the previous video, the one before, we turned on camera smoothing. Now, some of you are experiencing jitter, and jitter can be caused by a few different things. But essentially what will happen is as your character moves, they will appear to kind of shake, and that is jitter. Now, jitter is, in my experience, is most often caused by some sort of a desync in the way that the game is rendered. And a lot of the time that comes from having a high refresh rate monitor. And so you can look it up, you can Google it. There's a lot of different ideas for how to try and solve jitter as a problem because there's a lot of different issues that could be causing it. One thing that you might try, and I don't know that this will work for everyone, is to go into your player and inside of your camera here, instead of having it be processed in the idle frame, you can process your camera in the physics frame. Now, this might make it worse for some people. I'm not sure. So you can determine that. You'll just have to try it and see if it helps with your issue or if it makes it worse. I'm just going to leave mine on idle. I don't notice a difference between the two personally on my monitor. I have a kind of a, I think my monitor is 30 or 60 hertz. I don't remember which, but it's not very fast. Kind of an older monitor. Okay, so there's that. You can look into some other options. Some people just opt to not have position smoothing on their camera at all. And obviously, if you do that, when your character dies, the camera is going to jump over really quickly, and you might need to find a different solution than what we're doing. Okay, let's get started with our tile map. So I'm going to come into the file system, and I'm going to drag in some assets here. I have this tile set. I have these two slopes, the slopes and the slopes flipped. I'm going to drag these into the editor right here, and that will bring them in here. Now we can come create a new scene, go to other node and do tile map. And Godot 4 has completely redone their tile map system, and it has a lot of new features, but it's definitely a little bit weird to get used to at first. So keep that in mind. I'm sure it will continue to be improved. I think overall it was a net positive, despite some of the issues that, some of the, I would say, more usability issues. Overall, I think it was a net positive. So once you've created a tile map, we can create a tile set. So come over here and do new tile set like this. And it's going to have some properties set by default. We're just going to leave those for now. Over here on tiles, you have this plus button, and you can add new tiles. And we'll do an atlas tile like this. And once we add that new atlas tile, it will give us these properties. Now, there's a lot of tabs here. We have tiles, patterns, we have setup, select, paint. We have tile set, tile map. This is where I think some of the usability gets a little confusing sometimes. We've got a lot of tabs going on inside of this tile set that we're editing. But once we've created our atlas right here, we can see there's a texture, but by default it's empty. So we'll come grab our tile set and drag it right here. And it says the atlas texture was modified. Would you like to automatically create tiles in the atlas? we can say yes, and that will create tiles for all of it. Godot can detect where there's pixels in the image and create tiles. You can see it's gone through and created all of these tiles, although I think me clicking those created new tiles there. It did. So you could go through and click to create tiles if you were like, oh, I want a tile here. So I just right click to delete them. Okay, so we've got these tiles, right? And we can name this tile set right here. So we'll just call it Autotile, like this, I guess. That has most of the tiles that we need for our tile set. Now we can come over to select right here. And this allows us to select any of the tiles and modify properties about that tile. You can see you can modify any sort of animation, their coordinates, their rendering, stuff like the Z index. So we have a lot of stuff that we can modify on individual tiles if we want. If we come over to paint here, and then we can select a new property, this allows us to paint certain information onto our tile set here. And the very first thing that we're going to want to paint onto it is physics. So you can see though that we don't have any physics. If I try to click on this, it won't work. So in order to get that, we have to come over to our layers here. No, not layers. Yeah, I think it's under layers. I'm second guessing myself. And then add, no, not add element. Okay, maybe it's not under layers. Okay, I figured out what's going on. So you actually have to click on the tile set right here because it was kind of like minimized. So I have to click on it and that opens up and here's physics layers. That's what I was looking for. Not these layers down here, but physics layers. Okay, so you have to click on your tile set resource right here in order to open it up like this, and then you'll have physics layers. And here we can add an element. This is what I wanted. Okay, now we're gonna remove the mask, but we'll leave it on our world layer right here. And you can give it a physics material, but we don't need to. It doesn't need to have a physics material. That would just be if you wanted to modify how it behaved in the physics world for maybe like bouncing or roughness. I don't know exactly what options you have available there. Once we've created this physics layer over here, you can see when we come to paint, now we can bring up our physics. We can click on the physics layer. And this is the default collision shape, and we can just paint this shape onto all these tiles. And this is significantly faster than it used to be in Godot 3. I love this. It is a little bit weird to try and remember how to get this stuff set up, but it is faster once you kind of get it down. Okay, so we've set up our physics collisions for these tiles. Now our player can collide with them because they're on the world layer, but we want to set up our Autotile. So over here, we also have terrain sets, and terrain sets is where we're going to do that. So we're going to add an element, and it's going to be a terrain. And then we'll add an element to this terrain. See, I'm clicking that, and it gives me the option to add an element here. And we can name it. We'll just name it Autotile. You can have different terrains in your tile set. We're going to keep this simple. So we just have one terrain, essentially, for our Autotile. And the color here doesn't actually really matter. But I'm going to do like a gray, I think. We'll come to hue, saturation, value, and I'll bring down the saturation all the way. Just leave it as like a gray, like this. You can have different terrain types. You could see right here, we could add elements to add more and more terrain types if you had multiple terrain types. Okay, now that we've done that, we can come back to paint and instead of selecting the physics layer right here, we can now select our terrains and we can select our terrain set 0. And this will allow us to paint. We'll want to select the Autotile terrain. This will allow us to paint over here on this terrain. for our Autotile. And if we're going to need to zoom in here a bit now, squeeze this over here so we've got more room and zoom in. And this is where we actually select, this is where we actually paint. And I'm going to select all of these tiles. You can just hold down click and select them all, because we're going to be painting the Autotile on the bit masks on all of them. So that's what we're going to be doing now, is painting a bit mask. You can see once we've selected a tile, we get this tiny little square that allows us to paint our bit masks. Now, if you think about, you can see that these squares are divided up. There's 9 squares now. And the way that we draw inside of this tile will tell Godot when it should place that tile. So let's start with the simplest one. This is a single tile. When do we want Godot to place this tile? Well, we want to place this tile when there's a single tile with no tiles around it. And there we go. That's it. Now let's look at this top one right here. When do we want to place this? When do we want it to place this tile? We want it to place it when there's a tile and then there's a tile below it. See? This tile will be a single tile with no tiles around it in any direction except for below it. You can see that it connects the tiles below it, so we want to put a tile below it. This tile right here connects the tiles above it and below it. So we have it, and then we connect it to a tile above and a tile below. And then here we have this tile, and then it connects to tiles only above it. And you can see how that pattern works. For this corner, for example, it would connect to, you'd place this corner if you had it, and then tiles to the right, to the left, and in this corner, like that. And it gets a little bit intuitive in how you actually draw it, but the logic is always the same. Let's look at this center tile, for example. This one right here, we want to place this tile when it's completely surrounded, right? And then here, we can come in and do the rest here. And I have done this enough that I don't actually have to think about the logic for it every single time. I'm comfortable drawing the tiles on, and you can just copy what I'm doing if you want. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes sometimes. I still make mistakes sometimes when I'm setting up my tile maps. But it's better to just kind of do it and then fix the mistakes when you go to try and place the tiles. Okay, gotta make sure I don't miss this stuff. Let's see. And there. Okay. I think I set them all up right. Now you can, again, you can copy mine if you want. If your auto tiling doesn't work here in just a second, then you'll know that you likely got one of these wrong. You'll need to come back and try and double check. It's possible that I got one wrong too, actually. I'm looking, I don't see that I missed any, but I think we're good. Okay, I'm gonna save this as level tile map. I think tile map is usually, the M is usually uppercase in Godot, so I'm gonna do that. Now we can save this scene. We can come back into our world, and we can add our tile map here. Once we've added the tile map to the world, we can start to paint, but we need to come into terrains like this. Make sure you're on the tile map tab now, not the tile set. Tile set allows you to edit the tile set. Tile map is how you place it in the level. Then we can select our auto tile, and we can start to paint this auto tile. And Godot should automatically and correctly place the tiles that we have. Here we go. We're going to need to restructure our level a little bit to account for how this is going to be set up. Okay. Let's delete. Oh, we'll want to put some tiles here as well. That. Maybe like that. There. Okay. And I'm going to delete this static body that we had. And I'm going to delete this other static body that we had. And save. And I'm going to reposition some of these hearts a little bit. Although we don't quite have the space that I want. I want a little bit more space, I think. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's fine. Reposition the hearts. Okay, and we'll reposition our spikes too. There we go. Save and run the game. And our code broke. Okay, so invalid get index polygon on null index. That's because we deleted that polygon 2D, right? And this collision polygon. So before we were getting access to those, we no longer need those. So we'll delete this line here and those and save. Okay, run the game. Here we go. Okay, here's our character. They can collide with this auto tile. And oh boy. Whoops. It's definitely, oh goodness. Okay, how good am I at this game? That's the question. I'm struggling with the wall jumps here. We'll cheat. There we go. Okay, so the wall jumps still need work. That's going to be something we're going to have to do in a later video because we want to have a little bit more of a buffer for being able to detect the wall, or switch back to the single right and left input because that actually felt pretty good. Felt better than this anyways. Okay, so we've set up our world. The tile map is now working with this auto tile, and that's pretty good. But let's set up our slope tiles as well. We're going to come back to our tile map. We're going to come to tiles. And if you remember, we had these layers up here. You can see here we've got layers. Let's name this one base layer right here. Now let's add another layer. And this other layer will be slope. So, or slopes, I guess. So we have the base layer and we have the slopes layer, okay? And now we can come over here, and the reason I'm doing this is for when we're placing the tiles. It's convenient to have two layers. But the new tile map system allows for multiple layers, which is really powerful, in my opinion, in a single tile set. Before you had to do multiple tile maps if you wanted to do layers. Now we're going to create, let's see, we have to click on tile set, and then we can create a new atlas here, and we can drag over the slopes like this, do yes, and it will create those for us. And then we can click on paint, and we can select our physics layer right here, and we can click on these four because those are already, the physics are already going to be exactly how we want them. Now, the other thing we can do is click on this one right here, and its physics aren't, it's not how we want it yet, but we can easily change it by coming over here, clicking on this little X, and deleting this corner. Boom. And now we can click on it and it's the correct shape that we want. Okay, now let's click on this one And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust it. So we're going to click on this to move it, and we're going to move, we're going to move this down until it's right here. Now it's important that you have it touch the tip of each of these pixels along the way up. That's the position that we need it at, and that's important. Okay. But once you've done that, you can click over here again, and then we can click on this one, and this one we're going to have to adjust as well. So for this one, I'm holding Control to zoom in and out here. Over here, you don't have to hold Control. Keep that in mind. And then middle clicks to pan. Control and scrolling. Okay, so over here for this one, we need to add a new point. And then we're going to need to move that point until it's right here. And my snap is set to half pixel, snap to half pixel. That helps to make sure that you get it in the right spot. And then there. Okay, so now we've got those slope tiles in. You can save. And we're going to do the same thing, but for the other side. Now, it doesn't really have a good system for mirroring tiles right now, as far as I can tell. The research that I've done, you can use alternative tiles, but it's still a pain. So I've found it's easiest just to do a new tile map and to bring in a flipped slope tiles like this. And then we can come back to our paint, and then we can right click here and do reset to default tile shape, and just click on these and click on this one, remove this point and add it, and then click here, move this point. Come on. There we go. It's kind of tricky to select when it's close to these buttons, so you might have to move it away. And click here, then over here. We'll add a point somewhere like right there. We'll move it. Move this up to here. And then click. There we go. Now we have slopes set, the collision shapes for all of those. We can come back to our world, and this is where having multiple layers gets useful. Okay, so we'll click on tile map, and on our we want to switch from the base layer to the slopes layer. Okay, and when you place a tile on the slopes layer, like this, for example, this tile here. There we go. You can see that it draws on top of the base layer. So I've selected my tile map. I've selected the tile map tab, the tile that I want, and now I can paint, but this draws over the base layer. So if we come back into world, you can see these are displayed on top of the base layer, and that's exactly what we want. Okay? And the reason is because we're going to need to manually, if we want you can't really do auto tiling with slopes. So if we're going to have these slopes in and have them display correctly, we're going to need to manually adjust some of the tiles around the base layer. So let's get our slopes in first and make sure they're working. Okay, so we'll run the game now. And these slopes should be working, and they are. So the collisions are working with these slopes. And I'm really bad at this. It's really actually just the controls are awful. Once we've set up the slopes, we can come into our auto tile, and still on the slopes layer, make sure that you're still on the slopes layer, we can place the correct tiles to go with these spaces. So this one would be this, for example. And then right here, we would want this one. And then this darker color, this darker color. We'd want this top one here. And then for these inside edges, I have a tile inside of the tile, inside of our slopes for that. So we could use that if we come back to our slopes. Well, I guess I have an inside edge one with the, oh, here's an inside edge. So these right here, these two full ones. So this one right here would go here like that. And then if we got the flip side, then we could get this one for here like that. And you can see we're placing these on the slopes layer. So the base layer is still there underneath, but we've placed these on the slopes layer to get the correct tile that we need drawn on top of what was there before. And we need an inside corner for right here. A black one there, but we need this inside corner. And that's going to be this. Yeah, that one. Although you could use the slope tile there too. But now we've got nice looking slopes on top of the auto tile. So slopes are kind of the exception. If I'm holding to the right, that seems to work better. Huh. And I almost did it. But there you go. This is how I set up my auto tile with slopes inside of Godot 4. And I think that this system, using the layers like that, is a pretty powerful way to keep your auto tile in the background, but then draw slopes on top of it. Because unfortunately, you can't really auto tile slopes. The next best thing would be to actually use polygons again, like we were doing before, and then draw some sort of a texture on top of it. You could write code that would do that. But this is a good system if you're going to use, or the best system I've found if you're going to use the tile maps. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and learned something. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.